Well, another month has gone by and I've read another stack of books. So let's talk about them. One of which not really counting as a book. I don't know what counts as books. The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. I've read The Portrait of Dorian Gray, and that book is amazing. And Oscar Wilde's life was insane, and he has some of the best quotes I've ever heard. And this, I think, is the foundation of modern British humor. And one of the problems is it's the same humor that I see today on British television. Not kind of the same, literally the exact same jokes. So was Oscar Wilde just that good and that far ahead of its time? Or has British humor stagnated for 125 years? I will let you decide. But anyways, The Importance of Being Earnest is hilarious and I absolutely love it. And if anyone knows of a good adaptation of it that I can find digitally, I would love to watch it. So yeah, just let me know in the comments. With this being November and it almost being done, I have failed NaNoWriMo, but I put in a good effort. I wrote about 10,000 words. So I put in an okay-ish effort, 1/5 of the effort, you might say. And at the beginning of the month, I was really wanting to get motivated by listening to an audiobook or reading a book about writing. It helps a lot. I really like them. Even though I don't write as much as I should, I do really enjoy books about writing. I mean, I have a video about it, and I'll probably have a sequel eventually. Well, this book, Wonder Book, this one's from Canada, the Winnipeg Public Library, which is pretty cool. I got it for real cheap. This thing is crazy. Like, look at this. It's illustrated. It's got all sorts of funky stuff, and the book is very, very good. It's written by Jeff Vandermeer, and he's written some trippy stuff. Funny enough, I mentioned this in the book group I'm in, that I have read so many nonfiction things from Jeff Vandermeer now. Introductions to collections of science fiction and fantasy. He wrote an introduction for Wizardry and Wild Romance, Michael Moorcock's essay on the history of fantasy, and all sorts of stuff, but I've never read any of his fiction, which is just bizarre. I also asked if he lives on like a different time scale than us. Does he have more than 24 hours in a day? Because he's cranking out all this stuff. He's editing all these works. He's writing all these books. It's like, wow. I mean, it's a lot. I just thought it was awesome. But anyways, this thing is very, very good. And the audiobook is just as good, but in different ways. It straight up says at the beginning of the audiobook that a lot of the stuff requires the visual medium. So they changed that for the audio version. And the audio version is closer to a representation of their book workshops where, they do presentations in front of crowds and stuff. So I think both of them are valuable in different ways. And, they're about 75% of it is overlap or more. I'm not really sure. But I wanted this copy because some of the stuff in the audiobook, he does a really good job of breaking down a chapter in a book he wrote. But it's really hard to follow closely in audio format. And so that's why I got this, because it was wonderful in audio, but I really wanted the written version so that I could really dig deep and kind of take notes and stuff as I'm flipping through pages. Yeah, Wonder Book was awesome. I highly recommend it. It's one of the better how to write books that I've read, and I've read probably like 30 of them. So yeah, it's a good one. You should get it. Then we've got a surprise. Well, not a surprise because a couple of people, including Jimmy at the Fantasy Network, loved it, but we've got Fever Dream by George R.R. Martin. This is amazing. It is so intense. Like, I'm serious, like 70% of the way through the book, there's a good, the next 15 to 20% of the book, I just felt sick to my stomach, like the level of intensity. And it's just so crazy. There's a scene, I'm just going to call it the dinner scene. Well, holy crap. It is so intense and so sickening and so brutal. And well, I can sum this up with 4 words. We've got George R.R. Martin, vampires, 1857, Mississippi Riverboat. Bet you didn't expect all those to be combined. It's so good. It's so good. And I love everything I've read from George R.R. Martin that isn't a Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire, which I love. Well, I like. I haven't read them in a long time because my ass was chapped so bad from being gaslit from 2007 to 2011 about when the next book was going to come out. And that's just me being salty like everyone else, which, I don't blame him. I'm really not mad about it anymore. It doesn't matter. There's so much other wonderful stuff to read, including everything else George R.R. Martin's written. What I was trying to say is Fever Dream is amazing. I want more things like Fever Dream. Not even exactly like Fever Dream. I don't need a sequel. I want George R.R. Martin writing more things that aren't A Song of Ice and Fire because he's buried in A Song of Ice and Fire. So we don't get all this other stuff. Like everything he's written in Wildcards is amazing. His editing in Wildcards is amazing. I just love how good he is at working with other writers and collaborating, and he doesn't get to do it because he's got this yoke that is a Song of Ice and Fire around his neck, and it's gonna strangle him. But anyways, speaking of George R. R. Martin and Wild Cards 3, Joker's Wild. This is the first Mosaic novel I've ever read. Didn't know what a Mosaic novel was until I read this, and holy crap, it is amazing. So a Mosaic novel is when you get a bunch of different writers together. Each one writes their chunk of the story, and then you have an editor who puts it all together and kind of massages where the different sections come together and just kind of cleans it up. And the one that did it was George R. R. Martin, and he did a fantastic job. And so you have all of these amazing writers that I absolutely love. Let me see. We've got 7 contributors: Melinda M. Snodgrass, Leanne C. Harper, Walter Simmons, Louis Shiner, John J. Miller, George R. R. Martin, and Edward Bryant. And what's really amazing with this Mosaic novel is each point of view character in the book is written by someone else. So as you're reading it, and the point of view shifts, it legit shifts. Like, authors, when they're writing different POVs, sometimes it can be difficult to distinguish 2 different POVs in a novel. It ain't like this with this one. Each one is significantly different. It can be jarring for some people, but I didn't find it jarring at all. You just get real people, like different POVs. And what's really cool is when you see like 3 different people look at the same events or the same person, and all 3 of them have a different opinion of that person, and it shows. It's really, really cool. And there's a couple of characters in here now, like, man, Wild Cards is just after my heart. There's a guy in here. I cannot remember his name. Well, anyways, there's a guy in here. He doesn't even have superpowers. He's like a Zen archer monk, and he's amazing, and he's so brutal, and he's so badass. And like, man, the series is getting really good. And this book did an amazing job of wrapping up the first 3 books, because it's like a little trilogy the way the story works, but it also set up so much, and it didn't bungle it in some of the ways like later MCU movies did, where it's like, oh, we got to shoehorn this in so you know what's coming up next. No, the stuff drove the plot forward while setting up the plot for future books, and it's just really, really good. I highly recommend Wild Cards. Like, holy crap, I'm only on the 3rd one, and they've blown my mind. And there's a series, I think it's like 9, 10, and 11 or somewhere around there, that George R. R. Martin was like, oh, that's when they started really getting good. And I'm like, what? Like, these are already amazing. How did they start really getting good at like double-digit numbers? But anyways, anthologies with multiple authors are my new like chef's kiss. They're so good. Speaking of which, brought this bad boy back from last month because I wanted to finish the last book in this, because this is 3 of the anthologies, an omnibus of anthologies, anthology of omnibus, whatever they are. Anyways, the last one I think is the last one in this set was Shadows of Sanctuary, and it's pretty good. It's a mixed bag when you get a collection of short fiction from a bunch of different authors, even from the same author. Like, some of it might be a stinker, some of it might be just good enough, and then some will blow your mind. Well, in this, most of them were like, to good enough. And then one of them was like, holy crap, it was so beautifully written. I just couldn't believe it. And so, yeah, I liked it. I'm going to keep reading them. And I will say, it just started a couple months ago. Audible is releasing these like new audiobooks, really high quality sounding, really great narrator. And it looks like they're going to keep releasing them because the 4th one just came out this month. If that's how you want to consume them, I highly recommend it. They sound great. I really like the narrator, and they're just short. It's like a nice palate cleanser if you're on like some other series, or you're binging something, or you just want a break. Just crack open one of these Thieves World books and you'd be very happy. My cat just leaped over a baby gate that we use to keep the other cats and the dog out of a room. And it's so funny because it's really tall. He's a young man. He's fine. But he leaps over it, and when he lands, he makes like a pigeon noise, and it is so funny. But it's like boom, because he's hefty. So there's a big old thud on the floor. But anyways, back to books. I did it. Finally read another Silver John book. Manly Wade Wellman is amazing. This book, the plot is like kind of just there to move around the characters, and it was okay. But the characters, like, holy crap, the characters. Not only is John himself absolutely amazing, this being the 2nd book, you kind of see where stuff's going. Kind of see that there's a little more to John than just a guitar and everyone liking him. And I don't know if this influenced the Dresden Files, but I think it influenced the Dresden Files. Let's just put it that way. And you just have some just very simple, very beautifully written passages to describe a character. I mean, like in one sentence, he summed up the antagonist in just the perfect way. It was so eloquent and so beautiful. I could not believe it. And so, yeah, definitely, if you can find them, get your hands on some Manly Wade Wellman Silver John books. They're just so good. And like this one, I got lucky. I picked this up for like $2. This ain't cheap. It's a book club edition, but man, these are hard to find. There is a new collection from Valancourt Books that is John the Balladeer. And if you can get it, get it. I mentioned it in my book haul video because Valancourt Books is awesome. Please give them as much of your money as you can. And yeah, just do it. It's good. Next, we've got an OG. I've been slowly making my way through some just classic fantasy because I do 3 Under 300 where I talk about books from science fiction and fantasy before 1980, and The Eyes of the Overworld by Jack Vance. Cougar the Clever is a scumbag, but he's a scumbag that you end up rooting for, and you don't really know why. The boy is straight up a sociopath, and he, what's the best way to put this? He does not treat women well. He actually treats them quite poorly and pushes them into things against their will. Let's just go with that. And yes, the dude is a straight up scumbag, but it's written in like the most hilarious way. And it's like, it's the dying earth. All of these people that he interacts with know the earth is dying. Like they straight up don't know how much time they have left. And they're really, really crappy to each other because they're like, what? I could die tomorrow. Like, why would I worry about goodwill or making anything last when the sun might just wink out tomorrow? So, you know, screw it. Let's get wild. Let's do whatever we want. And it's just nuts. And you get to explore the dying earth and all the crazy things that happen. And Cougar the Clever he's such a moron, but he also like does the craziest stuff. I don't know how you make smooth brain 200 IQ plays, but he somehow does it. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. And the way that Jack Vance writes these, that man knew his way around a thesaurus. I don't know if any of you have taken like a GRE exam, but this boy uses a lot of GRE words. And so, yeah, I highly recommend it. It's very fun. There's a couple of things where Kugel does stuff and you're like, ooh, I don't feel so good reading this. But then like people do things to him. They're just awful. And most of the time it's because they trick him because he's greedy, a little stupid. But yeah, the book's really good. I just ordered the Goodman Games Dying Earth box set for Dungeon Crawl Classics. I cannot wait to play that. And so, yeah, I had to brush up on my Dying Earth. I got 2 more books in the original series, and then I'm going to read Songs of the Dying Earth that was edited by George R.R. Martin, you know, the guy that's real good at editing collections. So I can't wait to get to that. And now I have most certainly saved the best for last. I did not know what I was getting into when I read this book. Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke is an absolute masterpiece. I am not joking when I said I had no idea what I was getting into. I don't understand how a book that's barely over 200 pages long can have such like an worldview shattering, leave me in an emotional wreck. Like, I don't get it. I mean, I'm barely able to finish this sentence because I'm thinking about that book. Not only is the book a masterpiece, that title, Childhood's End, like you go into it thinking it's one thing and then it's completely different. Like the premise of the book is humans are about to wipe each other out with nuclear war because it's the Cold War and everything sucks. And, you know, we didn't know how much longer we were going to live. Remember Dying Earth? Yeah, same thing. Like, we don't know when Earth is going to end. And so, you know, some people were freaking out about it. Anyways, right before nuclear war starts, aliens show up. Gigantic ships just appear in the sky over like all of the major capitals in the world. And they're basically like, hey, cut it out. It's time for world government time and we're going to make your lives better. You know, you think that's like childhood's end because it's the end of like, I guess humans acting like children or something. You know, the parents have finally come back and they're telling you to get it together. But man, this book, holy crap, it goes places I never expected. And like, you know, I've read all of the 2001 books. I've read Rendezvous with Rama. It's not like I'm new to Arthur C. Clarke. Childhood's End is his masterpiece. Like, I could not believe it when I read it. Like, you know, I'm ranting about it at this point. Like, do yourself a favor and get that book. I'm going to be doing a 3 Under 300 just on Arthur C. Clarke to discuss how important this book was, because this thing was a game changer. And the fact that it was written in the early 1950s, it's incredible. Yeah, so that's my November wrap up of books. I'm trying to think of what I plan on doing for December. I've got some things I want to wrap up. I might do another Jack Vance like Dying Earth book, but I've been told it's better to kind of take your time with those. Don't read them all at once because he uses a lot of the same tropes and kind of same plots, and so they're really fun to read. But if you read them back to back to back, it gets repetitive. I will say I'm currently reading Swords and Deviltry, the first Fafhrd and Grey Mouser book. I got the Dungeon Crawl Classics box set for Lonkmar, so I wanted to brush up on my Fafhrd and Grey Mouser. And also, Fafhrd and Grey Mouser is fun at any time. Like, I cannot believe those are as old as they are. Man, you talk about some timeless writing. Fritz Leiber, they're still so good now. And what's amazing is he's got like these like old-timey tropes that a lot of people don't like about, you know, men and women being like put in their places or whatever. But almost immediately that kind of view is like shattered in the first Fafhrd and Grey Mouser story. I mean, like Fafhrd, who's like a barbarian of the north or whatever, he's actually a skald, which is amazing. He lives under a matriarchy. Like, yeah, there's like the men's men Viking raiders and stuff, but the women work together and they control everything that's not getting on a boat and going and raiding other places, basically. So just stuff like that. It's really, really interesting. And it even flips some other interesting tropes on their head, which it's hard to say they flipped tropes on their head when this was written, when the tropes were established. So maybe he's just ahead of his time. You know, Fritz Leiber, who'd have thought? One of the greatest sword and sorcery writers of all time was ahead of his time. Yeah, I'm reading that and I'm listening to that because the audiobooks are really, really good. And they're the ones that I was talking about where Neil Gaiman insisted that they exist on Audible. And they are free with an Audible membership, not the actual collections, but each individual story you can download. It's kind of tedious, but they're free as long as you're an Audible member. I'm not sponsored by Audible or anything. You know, I know Amazon's a bit of the devil, but what are you going to do? And so anyways, yeah, that's good. And I'm reading a book from Harry Turtledove, and Harry Turtledove's famous for writing alternate history. He's a historian and he's written a lot of like World War II alternate history, which I've read all of the World War II that involves like alien invasions, and that is super cool. And I've read all of the series where like the South won the Civil War, and then you have like an apartheid South at like the turn of the 20th century, and then it leads into like World War I and World War II, where the North and the South fought against each other in the same way, you know, Europe fought. And it's just really interesting. They're quick, easy reads. The way he writes, it's not like overly complex. He doesn't have any weird prose or anything. They're just entertaining. But anyways, he had a book I didn't know existed, and it's called Agents of Byzantium, and it was from Isaac Asimov's Presents, which was like a book club edition thing. And it's about an alternate history where the Byzantine Empire never fell and the Persian Empire never fell because Muhammad never became a prophet for Islam. Instead, he converted to Eastern Orthodoxy or Catholicism in Syria and became one of the prophets for the Eastern Orthodox Church. And so you just have like this Eastern Empire and the Byzantine Empire, and it's kind of them feuding and dealing with the Byzantine Empire. Where I'm at, I'm only like 25 pages in, and it's a short book. It's like 150 pages or 180 something. But the Byzantine Empire, which the book kind of gives away something before you even start, Agent of Byzantium. The dude's a spy, and he's like working with the Byzantine Empire, but he is infiltrated as like a traitor. Like he's betrayed the Byzantine Empire, and he goes on to work with the nomads, like the Khans, basically. And so he's working with these nomads and kind of trying to figure out what they have, because they have this mysterious technology. Because of course the Byzantine Empire stayed around. This is like the 1350s. There's not any early Renaissance. There's no gunpowder, and they've kind of stagnated this entire time because the empire never fell. And so you just get this technology that's kind of bleeding onto the edge of this stagnated empire, and it's just really interesting. It's a fun read. I wanted a break from heavy stuff like Childhood's End that just about broke me. The last like 20% of that book is just little pieces of my heart being ripped away. I needed something light, as usual. I'm rambling at this point. So that's what I read for November. December is going to be finishing Swords and Deviltry, finishing up Agent of Byzantium, and then I might start the Sun Eater series, maybe. Right now, I've really been trying to put an effort into finishing up my backlog of like books I own physically, because I just want to get them out of the way. Not really get them out of the way, just kind of get a decent chunk out of the stuff I have, because I plan on starting John Gwynn's books in January, and I know that's going to consume me for a third of the year, and those are going to be books I don't own. So as I'm either listening to them or getting into them, I'm going to want to own physical copies. I mean, you got to have these. Like, I listened to The Eyes of the Overworld, but man, You got books you can sniff or, mount your trophies on the shelves, that kind of thing. But anyways, Sun Eater might get started in December. I'm doing 2 buddy reads, which are going to be the first book in Howard Andrew Jones' kind of Swords and Sandals series. And I'm really looking forward to that. And also Fall of Giants by Ken Follett. I've never read anything by Ken Follett, so that'll be interesting. I do like historical fiction, but I end up finding myself like 3/4 of the way through them. I'm gonna be like, what if there was a wizard or like a magic sword or some like explosions or something? I think that'd be cool right now. So I end up reading historical fiction and just thinking, I need more fantasy. So we'll see how it goes, because I really do enjoy historical fiction, and when it's done well, like Taipan from James Clavell or Shogun, like the characters are just so good, and it does such a good job of throwing you into the world that I don't care if there's not wizards, because I have these people I care about now, and I want to see what happens. So we'll see how it goes. I'll let you know at the end of December. If you've read any of these, let me know. If you got any suggestions to play off of these, I'd love to hear it. I got tons of book reviews on my channel. I got some book haul videos, and I'm always doing the 3 under 300. That's what I'm calling it now. 3 books under 300 pages from before 1980 that influenced modern science fiction and fantasy. So anyways, with that, I'll see you next time.